A natural leader, Pat Bronson used speed, agility, and talent to excel in sports. As a player and coach, her achievements were numerous. She was a founding member of the Ontario Women's Hockey Association and a member of 6 provincial championship teams, including the 1992 Senior A Ontario winners. In softball, she won 5 city and 6 provincial championships and earned the Top Batter Award in the 1983 Ontario Finals. Pat stood out in basketball, PWBL Rookie of the Year, and twice League MVP. She won 5 consecutive league titles with the YWCA. She also served as league president for more than 20 years, and in 1986 was recipient of its Dedication Award. She was a playing member of the 1968 Ontario and Eastern Canada champion Keith Brown Jetettes. In her teens, Pat was 3 times track and field champion of Crestwood Secondary School. Pat was Peterborough's Female Athlete of the Year in 1976, YWCA Woman of the Year in 1980, and received the Government of Canada Certificate of Merit in 1987 for contribution to her community. Pat Bronson. To hear that, I don't know when the last time you read your bio, or last time you went and found your display in the Peterborough Memorial Centre, but when you hear it back, what's the first thought in your mind?
Well, you don't know that you're going to do all that when you start out, but I was just fortunate. I played on a lot of good teams, fortunate to have a lot of good people around me that helped my career. And but really, it's just, you love sports and you get involved, and then you just happen to end up on good teams that you know, you can, then with good teams you achieve a lot of things, and we've had a lot of good teams in Peterborough.
Now, something every single person in my experience has a different reason, whether they love sports or dislike sports. For you, a person in the Sports Hall of Fame, it's more likely that you love sports, as you just said, but what is the crux of that? Why, or where does it all come from for you?
I didn't come from my family. My parents, they supported me, but they didn't push me. My mother played softball, but for the Westclocks, I believe, or Lockworks, back in the 40s, but I wasn't around then to see it. But she was a pitcher, but they never said go out and play. They just provided us all with the opportunity to do whatever we wanted to do. So, and so that's what happened. I just ended up in some places where my sporting career really started in high school, because I didn't really play a lot of, I played a lot of sports as a kid in public school, but I didn't play in any leagues or organized sports. But when I got to high school, then that certainly provided the opportunity for me to express my ability to participate in sports. I played basketball, volleyball, track and field in high school. And then from there I went on to play softball and basketball and hockey. And
now, you're clearly competitive. So, growing up, was that were there things to be competitive about that kind of instilled that in you going forward? You say it didn't come from your family, but there had to be something.
Well, in public school, we'd go out and we'd start a ball game, and we could play one ball game for 2 or 3 weeks. So we'd form teams in our classrooms and then go out and play, and we just kept playing, and the game never ended. So and we were all very serious about it. We get back into the classroom, and you'd be nattering with each other about, that was a terrible play or whatever. But we just that's what started it. It was just in the public school, just at kindergarten, and noon hours we just go, because I went to a one-room schoolhouse, so we were all in one classroom. So we just formed teams out of every kid that was in the school. So every kid in the school played. And so then it became heated at times, but that's what started it. It was just that enthusiasm for playing sport, and so just everything grew from that.
Yeah, close-knit competition with everybody being in that same room.
Yeah.
And then you said that it really kind of took off for you in high school.
Yes.
So what were your favorite things about that? What really kind of helped you get rolling with it?
Well, I enjoyed the organized sports. I'd never played really organized sports up until high school, and it was the fact that you could play other schools. You had good competition. I can't say the coaching was the very best, because it was really, it was high school sports, and we never did beat PCVS because we were a new school and starting out new teams. But I wouldn't necessarily say the high school teachers were always the best coaches, because they were just probably stuck into that position of coaching a basketball team. So I had to expand off into the city league in both softball and basketball in order to start to get that, understand the game of basketball and softball. And but with high school, it was just I think it was just natural ability for the most part for all of us. We just were put on a team, and we had a lot of natural ability. If we clicked as a team, then we played fairly well, but we just couldn't compete at that time with some of the schools that have been, especially PCBS. But and in track and field, it was really, there was no training. It was just you hit the field in the spring and the way you went, and you know, some of us made it to Kawarthas. I think I made it to Kawarthas, but didn't have enough skill or enough training to go on to CASA or any of those, because it was just spring, you just went out and you ran, and you didn't, you know, so that was the difference between then and now, where the training and the development of all of the athletes now compared to what we had back then. We just had the natural ability.
And you talk about natural things. The first three lines, the first three words in your bio are a natural leader. And you talk about the coaching maybe not being there in high school. So was it something that you did? Did you take a leadership role?
No,
with all those teams?
I wasn't necessarily, I wouldn't say that I was a coach. I was more of an organizer. I, you know, took on roles that kept leagues going and helped with leagues. I worked fairly a lot of years in the Peterborough Women's Basketball League and kept it going. And because I'd inherited such a legacy that it was something that I just wanted to do. So it was more on the organizational versus the coaching. When I coached along with somebody. I didn't initiate. I wasn't a head coach.
Okay. So take yourself back to elementary school, high school, when you're playing all these sports, and project forward. What would, say, 15-year-old Pat Bronson be thinking even right now, or say the moment that you were inducted? Could you imagine what young Pat Bronson would have thought of Pat Bronson, who's accomplished all this?
I probably wouldn't have thought anything of it, because I just played for the love of playing. You don't think down the road that this is going to come to something. And it's nice. It's nice at the end of your career to have that recognition. But you never do that for that purpose. You just played because you love to play. I love to run. I love to participate. Didn't matter what the game was. We always had a game of something, and so that was more important to me. The game was more important than the end results of getting inducted into the Hall of Fame. Mind you, it was an honor, but it wasn't something I would have ever thought about. And had it never happened, I would have still done what I did. So, and then
back in that moment again, there are all those accolades that are listed in your bio, and those are obviously great memories. But beyond that, the moments that wouldn't be noted, what's your greatest memory of sport that kind of isn't in there? Something that's a little bit under the surface, whether it was on the playground or in practice.
It's what my memory is of. And when we won championships, we did it as a team, and it was that gratification that each one of us contributed something to winning that championship. And that was more, for me, that felt better for me to do it as a team and accomplish it as a team than as an individual. We had lots of great moments. I mean, I remember the 1992 Women's Senior A Championship game, gold medal game. I think we were in Brantford, and the game was into second or third overtime, and Cheryl Coombs picked up the puck and went down and stepped across the blue line and blasted a slap shot, and in it went, and we won the gold medal. So we know everybody that was on that team. We know that it was Cheryl that blasted that shot, but it was everybody hanging in there for all those overtimes to keep the nerves together to win that championship. And I think that was the first Senior A championship for Peterborough women's hockey. And so that was an exciting moment for us. And it was because we accomplished it as a group, and we hung together as a group.
How much can you say it means to have won together? What does that do to bring people together versus a season that was uneventful or a finish that you didn't want? How much different is it when you do win together?
Definitely, a lot. You've had some bad seasons, and you leave that bad season behind, and you don't think about it anymore. But we still get together as a group, and we talk about that moment, that game, and that's what we talk about, is the fact that we did it as a group, and there was no other than Cheryl Coombs obviously being the one that took the shot. But we still talk about it because it was a great moment for us, and I've had lots of great moments. In the 1980 Senior Tier 2 women's softball, we were playing up in Norwich. We'd had a terrible season. We didn't think we were going to go anywhere that season, and we had to bring Maggie Royce out of retirement. She was our elite pitcher, and but she'd retired because she had back problems. But we convinced her to come back and play, so she warmed up all summer using a rock and to pitch, and then she just stepped in and helped us in the PWP Provincial Women's Softball Championship game, and well, she did the whole series of that whole tournament because it's tournament style, but we won the gold medal there, and we were just looking at each other thinking, we never thought we would make it, but we just stuck together, and with a coach like Bobby Crow, that, you know, I mean, there was tension because it was a tight game, and it was against the team from Brantford, Oswego, I think, and it was a tight game, and the girl from Brantford was on third base, and there was a hit, and she came home, but the ball came in, and Ann Lang was the catcher. And that girl hit Ann so hard that she just drove her, just because she just dove into home plate. But when Ann rolled over, her husband came out to her and looked down and said, "Well, you can let go of the ball now," because the girl was out because Ann she knew she was going to get hit, so she just steeled herself, and the girl just drilled her in. But so we won that championship, so that was something that we all remember, and you know, the '68 going to the Canadian Championships in basketball. I mean, we beat the best team in the province, who had won it several years in a row, but we also had their best player playing for us in Peterborough, Maggie Royce again. She came to Peterborough to play with us, and we beat Hamilton out and went to Canadian Championships. That was pretty impressive. I think I was basically bench strength at that time because I was young, so it was great. It was a great experience. So,
how fresh do those memories still feel?
Well, they're fresh right in my mind today.
Yeah.
I mean, I can remember the feeling, you know, everything about those championships, and we won a lot. I mean, Peterborough's got a lot of talent, and we just happen to have a lot of good teams here, and so in 3 different sports, I've won provincial championships, and so it's and basically with maybe the nucleus of the same players in the same sport, but.
You talk about your memories being fresh. The recruitment process to bring Maggie Roy back out of retirement. Do you remember what went into that?
Well, it was Ann Lang that kept going out and talking to her about it, and we just felt as a team. I mean, we had pitchers, but we were just not gelling, and everybody agreed that if we were going to win this championship, we're going to have to bring Maggie out of retirement because we were just not. There was something going on. We didn't know what it was. I mean, it was the same group of people, but well, we were moving up a level for sure. But so it was Ann that just kept convincing Maggie, and then Maggie said, "Okay, I'll do it," and she just prepared herself. And Maggie's an inductee into the Hall of Fame as well. Mm-hmm. She was a tremendous basketball player, so again, as I say, I've been fortunate to have those kind of teammates.
And the teams that you did play on, going through the sports, hockey, softball, lacrosse, or not lacrosse, but basketball. As you go through them, when you were at your personal peak, what role were you playing on the teams in terms of positions and then role in the actual course of the game? Yeah,
I was a guard in basketball, so I was able to manage the floor from the back end, and we had, you know. Again, we had a lot of good players, and everybody seemed to know their position. So I don't count myself. I participated and I gave my best in terms of I always gave the best effort I could give. But I can't say that I was the one that put us over the top. I was just part of it, but played well enough to help the team. I think softball probably was my best sport. I played center field, and I had speed, and I could, you know, drag down a lot of long balls, and I can remember Paul Corelli from Coburg. He just would always shake his head because we'd often play Coburg, and we'd go away to tournaments and we'd end up in the finals, and it would be against Coburg. And of course, the long ball would go out, and Paul Corelli says he just knew, oh well, if it's a long ball, she's going to get it. There's just so it was just because of my speed, and I could track down a ball from a fair distance, but he always gave me that credit that it was my speed and my ability to track down those long balls, that he always knew if a ball went anywhere near me that they were done.
When you watch now, do those instincts still kick in? If you're watching just some kids play, say anywhere in town or anybody playing, do you still get that exact same feeling when a ball goes flying into center field?
Yeah, or you're not in the right position, and again, we had a coach like Bobby Crow and a catcher like Ann Lang. and a pitcher like Maggie Roy's, that you basically knew where the ball was coming because the strategy that they used for every batter, that you basically knew. Bobby would just say, you know, shift, and you knew where Maggie was going to throw the ball, and that where they were going to hit. If they hit it, that's where it was going to come.
Yeah, pitching outside.
It was a lot of strategy, and that was something that I learned from a guy like Bobby Crow, who was all strategy. He was a strategy for batting, he was a strategy for fielding, and I think that probably we won a lot of championships because we put a lot of effort into understanding, you know, where the ball was going to come and how we were going to defend it. And so I think that we'd look at each other after a championship and say, you know, we knew why we won it. We knew we won it because we beat them, not because we were a better team, but we played strategic, you know, fielding, and I didn't. That was something that a lot of teams probably never understood back in those days. That Bobby Crow was. I mean, even in batting, he did not like fly balls. He hated fly balls, and so he would always, you know, coach us to place the ball and put it on the ground. And he said, you know, they've got to do several things. They've got to pick it up, they've got to throw it, and the person at the other end has to catch it. So, you know, he always used to say a fly ball was a can of corn. He hated them.
Well, that's something different in baseball these days, I guess. Everybody's trying to hit the fly ball at all times.
Well, that's good if at a certain point in the game, but there's certain points in the game when the fly ball is no good to you. So he always taught us to hit behind the runner. If we had a runner on, hit behind the runner. And so we learned to place. So it wasn't necessarily we were going up, other than Isabel Nichols that could put the ball over the fence almost every time up. But the rest of us, we had to learn to place hit.
And the true ins and outs and fundamentals of the game, which is often the true beauty of a game when it comes down to it.
Right.
Now, with the way that sports are played now, do you feel like that has continued to go on? Do you see it very often?
Oh, I think, yes. I think that the coaching is better. I think the development is better. The game is better because it's all studied now. It's everybody, you know, really gets down to the fine detail of the game now versus back in the old days. You just went out, you picked up the bat, and you went to the plate, and whatever came in, you tried to swing at it. But no, I think that now the benefit of the kids that are playing now have the benefit of all of that, the technology, the development, the understanding of all of the games that they play now is far superior.
Do you find that something's missing from the game because that margin of error is shrunk, or those moments of chaos don't happen as often?
Well, I think that there's more pressure. You know, we can basically say we played mostly for fun, although when we were in provincial playdowns that we were playing to win, but mostly it was started out being fun, and overall it was fun, but you know, it became more tense as the things were on the line, as the championships were starting to be on the line for you. Then you became more serious as a group. And
so the way that you are describing it to me, that you in your mind, your legacy is being parts of great teams.
Absolutely.
What do you feel that your perceived legacy would be from people on the outside looking in?
I think that they would see that I was committed as an athlete, that I did my best, that I was fast, and that, I mean, that's always been said about me. Your speed has been your biggest plus. But and my I guess because I respected the players on the other team as well, and respected the game, and you know, I think that those are the things, and my organizational ability, my commitment to my teammates, and to the game. I mean, you can get into some pretty, you know, obviously if you've played any sports, you can get into some Donnybrooks no matter what sport you're playing, but you know, it's hope that doesn't happen. That's not what you're there for. And but I think for me, in hockey, forming the Ontario Women's Hockey Association was probably one of the highlights of my whole hockey career, because we were floundering. There was lots of hockey being played, and women have played hockey right from the very start and really have never stopped. It's just that it didn't get the exposure, but when I study and go back and look at the history, women have always played hockey. So this thing that everybody wants to talk about is women playing hockey and what women have accomplished. Yes, we have accomplished a lot, but you know, we've always played the game. What we needed was to be organized, which was different. The men were organized and we weren't. And so in 74, 75, there was a group headed by a lawyer in Kingston. Her name was Kay Cartwright. Cookie, we called her. And she started to pull people together to say, we need to form a provincial organization, to have some structure, to be able to access government funding to help develop the game of hockey. And so then she tapped into me, and she gave me a huge area to go out and talk to the teams and the players from Peterborough to Huntsville to wherever, and gather information and see where teams were playing and who was playing. And because at the time, you could have an 11-year-old playing on a team with 35-year-olds. That in women's hockey, that's the way it was.
You've told me that before. It still stuns me. I still tell people about that.
Because in small communities, you didn't have the option of having a lot of people to play with, so you had that huge gap in age. And so we wanted to be able to develop the hockey so that we could then slot kids into their own age groups. And it eventually came. It didn't come overnight, but it eventually came. And here it is today. It's the Ontario Women's Hockey Association is the only independent women's hockey organization in the world, as far as I know, continues. Because the others, in the other provinces, they joined with their male counterparts and formed their organizations under their provincial hockey organizations, where the OWHA is still an independent organization for female hockey, but yes, reporting through the structures through to Hockey Canada. But so it's huge. It was.
What were the roadblocks?
Roadblocks were really probably the same roadblocks as males. Ice time, availability of ice time, because we couldn't, you know, if you couldn't have several teams in a town because you didn't have the ice time to support those teams. So as more ice became available, then more ice opened up. I'll talk about Peterborough. Once they started to build new arenas, then they saw that the women needed to have their fair share of the ice, where previous to that, we were all playing outside of the city of Peterborough. We were playing in Norwood and Bridge North and Lakefield and you know, and they did have teams in those areas, but we had to move out of the city because there was absolutely no ice, and nobody, and the men wouldn't share it because they didn't have enough for themselves. But so I would say that was the biggest downfall for women's hockey, was the lack of facilities, the ice.
Did you have any idea while you were playing and as you were eventually forming organizations of who or what you were working towards? Like, did you have any idea the impact that it might have going forward? Like, keep on compounding to. I interviewed you this year at the Peterborough Pete's game when it was Girls Hockey Day in Peterborough. Did you envision it getting to that point? Did you know you were playing for that?
You hoped. We didn't know how it was all going to work out, but there was a lot of energy back in those days to do this, and a lot of commitment and buy-in. So we knew something was going to happen, and with the potential of having Canadian championships, real Canadian championships, not ones that were formed out of just a fairly large tournament, but ones that represented every province. We knew that was probably going to happen. We knew that we already had the provincial championships that were going to happen, but we didn't know that world championships and Olympic. We hoped, but we didn't know. So that's something that's come out of all of that dream.
This thing going forward, the first time that you watched it,
I was thrilled, yeah. And some people say, well, I wish it had happened in my day. It doesn't bother me that it didn't happen in my day. I'm just glad it happened. And you know, that what it is now. I mean, I did have a brief conversation with Hayley Wickenheiser, and I think I mentioned that I was up at the Lindsay campus of Sir Sanford, and she was over at the Lindsay Rec Complex doing a hockey school. So I went over and had a chat with her, and you know, and she said she was, people her age were grateful for the people my age that came before them and had this all worked out, and so that they didn't have to work as hard at organizing and making it happen.
So can you walk into an arena and see girls playing without smiling?
No, I think it's wonderful. I just think the whole thing is just that, as I've said, now it's just, yeah, sure, girls play hockey, women play hockey. There's no big deal around it anymore that you know, it's not a phenomenon anymore. It's real, and I see, you know, ex-Petes coaching their daughters and just, you know, proud to walk into the rinks with their daughters carrying their bags, and it's wonderful. It's just a great atmosphere. And the number of women that are coming to play the game, the Lakefield Women's Hockey League, which came out of the PJHA, you know, it's women coming out just to play the game that they enjoy playing, and it doesn't have to be at a high level. They're just playing the game to enjoy it, and so that's the thing. The game can be played at any level and enjoyed at any level.
Now, as you were playing, you've mentioned you're playing for the joy, for the camaraderie, everything that goes along with that. But who would you say you were playing for?
We were just playing for the team. We didn't realize what we were involved in in the era that we played hockey. We didn't realize what we were doing to bring forward what is happening now. We just played for the moment. We were just trying to find. Our biggest thing was just to try to find a game, because we had to travel to Kingston and Picton and Belleville and Stirling in our league to play competitive hockey.
Yeah, but in terms of pride, for a lot of guys or girls, they'll say they played to make their mom or their dad proud.
No,
all for yourself.
Yeah,
in your team.
Yeah. Because my parents, again, they didn't come and watch a lot of my games. They were happy I was involved, but it didn't matter to them. I was doing something I wanted to do. I'm sure that they were proud in the end when they saw the accomplishments, but it wasn't a big deal. I mean, it was more that, to me, it's the camaraderie. It's the teammates, and they're lifelong friends.
Yes.
We're all friends, and it's because of all of that.
And it brought you to talk about a lifelong friendship and the group that is now the Peterborough District Sports Hall of Fame. You're heavily involved now with the Hall of Fame and continuing with the legacy of Peterborough sports. How important is that to you, and how important do you feel it continues to be?
Well, with the Hall of Fame, I think that what we're doing there is not only are we recognizing the accomplishments of our great athletes, but really we're collecting the history of sport in Peterborough and community. And I will want to preface that to say that community is also a part of the Peterborough District Sports Hall of Fame. Lakefield and Norwood and Keene and Millbrook and places like that, they all contributed to the development of all of the sports. And so I don't ever want to leave them out. But yeah, more for me personally, it's the legacy of the sport, it's the heritage of the sport that I'm more interested in, the history of it, because the history of the sport is also a part of the history of the community. Sport and society and the things that are happening within the community have always, sport has always played an active role. And you can talk about an individual who was an athlete, but then you don't understand what they did as a person. And what they did as a person is as great as what they did as an athlete sometimes, and so that's what I like. I like the legacy of it all and the heritage.
The history of women's sports. I remember reading sports history books when I was a kid and looking back and seeing people playing hockey. And you talk about how women have always played hockey. There were always, even when they were playing with skates made of bone, there were always women playing hockey in the long skirts, which would be shocking. Did you ever have to play in skirts before?
No.
Okay. Who knows?
But
documenting the history of women's sports, it's something that you're passionate about.
That's right. Yeah. There's the three. I'd like to do all the sports at some point on behalf of the Hall of Fame, but my personal interest is women's hockey, and I've connected because some connection to Peterborough. Her name is Ellen Bond. She works for the Library and Archives Canada, and they're collecting the history of women's hockey. So she's indicated to me that she'll take everything that I have and have it placed at the archives, the Library and Archives Canada. So that's what got it started, with this conversation with Ellen Bond. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to pop a Facebook page up to do with women's sports, not just hockey, but all sports. So it's taken off, and it's phenomenal. The people that are responding, and I'm just posting once in a while. I'm not throwing a lot of pictures up there yet because I'm trying to feel it out. But other people are contributing pictures, and now we're getting comments from the individuals that played on those teams, And so it's quite interesting. And so that's a part of me collecting the history of, in particular, hockey right now. Women's sports in Peterborough, I can say that the YWCA is responsible for the development of organized sports for women right from the early 1900s right forward, probably into the 1950s. There was a big influence by the YWCA.
You're talking Canada-wide?
No, Peterborough. I'm
Peterborough, okay.
talking Peterborough. I don't know.
Okay.
I haven't expanded my research out that far, but no, Peterborough. So I would say that the YWCA was the one that supported and encouraged women to participate in physical activity, and so that they developed teams. And the women's basketball started in 1919 and went straight through, and I think the Peterborough Women's Basketball League is still going, and it was never stopped. It's been a consecutive running league all those years. Women's hockey was played in Peterborough in leagues in the 1920s and 30s. Softball, again, 1920s, with the Peterborough Women's Softball League. Some great players like Dot Mortimer and Dot Miller, I guess, Dot Mortimer Miller and Gladys, her sister. Two great individuals who went on to form the Provincial Women's Softball Union. So there's a Peterborough influence in provincial organizations, and so I'm just learning a lot about, but I just want to start to document women's sports in Peterborough because I think it's important. And so I'm being encouraged by the responses I'm getting on this Facebook page of the women that are really excited about seeing, because it's bringing back their past as well, and they're talking about old championships or old teams, and it's a lot of fun.
What is the name of your Facebook page?
It's Peterborough Women in Sports Peterborough, something, the history of women in sports in Peterborough. Yeah, so it's because we had a manuscript. I'll step back a bit. Back in 1988, the Hall of Fame had a manuscript written by John Driscoll he wrote for the Peterborough Examiner, and they had a group and they wrote some stories about Peterborough sport history from the very beginning, from the 1850s on into the early 1900s, but it was never completed, and we would like to keep going with it because there's still a lot of history to record. But I thought, well, what's missing is the women's part of it. And so as I've been researching and reading, I'm thinking, oh, there's a lot of history here of women who did participate way back in the early 1900s.
What gems have you uncovered? Have there been any great stories that you've found?
Well, yeah, it's what I'm finding is, in particular with the women's softball, the write-ups that were written, the stories that were written about the women's softball by people like Cease Perdue, and I don't know whether you ever read anything by Cease Perdue, but he was quite a character in the way he used words, but I've read a lot of articles that he's written about the women's softball, so they got a lot of coverage back in the 30s, 40s, 50s.
In the Examiner?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, in the Peterborough Examiner, and the fact that the women actually are responsible for putting the lights at East City Bowl, because the Women's League moved to East City Bowl when they started to form and organize, and so there was Riverside Park, but then they built East City Bowl. So the two beautiful ballparks that you couldn't imagine anything better than those two ballparks. But so the women came into that ballpark and started to play ball there, and I have some pictures as well as the old ballpark even before I think the Lions Club was built there, and so that's what I find interesting, and where they played. Some of them played down at the exhibition ground, some of them played over at the Armories. They played indoor ball. Men started playing indoor ball, and so it's just the various facilities that they had to play. But it was the development of the East City Bowl that intrigued me, and developed it into the beautiful ballpark that it is today.
This is truly amazing, and as I've traveled around Ontario playing baseball, there's not much like that.
No, there isn't. No. I've played in some nice ballparks, but coming back to East City Bowl was always a pleasure. And we didn't get to play in the bowl often because I played out in Lakefield. We had a team in Lakefield, and we won 4 provincial championships with that Lakefield team. But every year before we went to our final provincial championship tournament, we always played out of the bowl. We always went to the bowl for practices, and that's something special for the team. We always loved going to the bowl to play.
You talked about all the different places that you did have to play. How creative did you have to be sometimes to find a place to practice or to play?
Not in softball, because we always had some
Okay.
place to play in softball. It was hockey where we had to be creative. We would travel anywhere. We played out of Norwood a lot, and sometimes we played out of a little place called Colburn, and we traveled to play. And the same with some of the other teams in Eastern Ontario. The Metro Toronto area had a lot of rinks, and so they had a lot of opportunity to play in their own home rinks, but we didn't. And so it was traveling for facilities is probably the biggest challenge that women's sport had, was to try to go and find a place to play and a team to play.
So every year almost, it seems, when you're watching, say, the World Juniors, there's a story of a hockey player from, say, Northern Ontario, Northern Manitoba, or somewhere in BC where they had to travel a really big distance to get to their practice facility. And it's all comparable, I guess, to what you guys had to do back then. Those drives, and you talk about the city names, but to just give an idea of how long the drives could have been.
Well, Picton, what would be Picton? Be an hour and a half to Picton, and in the middle of the winter, and it could be on a Tuesday night or Wednesday night. And again, Ann Lang and her husband Don had an old van, and it was the days and you didn't have to worry about seat belts, and they'd load that van full of players, and it probably would be 6 or 10 players in that van getting their equipment on traveling down the road to Picton in the middle of the winter, or to Kingston, or to Belleville. So yeah, I mean, we didn't think about it then because we just wanted to play so bad. And ice storms didn't stop us. We traveled through some of the worst weather because we wanted to play so bad. But there they were. They'd be back in the back of the van getting their equipment on because we'd be running late because of the weather. And so those were the things that we had to experience as female hockey players, because we just couldn't walk out the door and go down to the, I never played at the Civic Arena, but go down to the Civic or go over to the Kinsman or the Memorial Center. But so.
Now for me, those road trips, or the hockey road trips, in my mind, it's almost every time I hear Joe Bowen on the radio, or if I hear, say, Dennis Bayak. He was the play-by-play guy on Leafs games when I was playing minor hockey and traveling all over the place. Now, is there a voice or even music, something that you would remember from those road trips?
Well, the girls in the back used to have a portable phonograph, a record player, and they wound it up, and they always had that crystal chandelier, and they played it all the time. And most of them weren't country music fans, but Don Lang got them involved with the country music, and so then they became Dolly Parton fans. So that music stuck. It still sticks in our minds. When we get together as a group, that song always comes up, Crystal Chandelier, because that's what they played on those long road trips, and it was always over and over and over again. So yeah.
Yeah, it's actually amazing sometimes how much it can bring back those memories.
Yeah.
And then when you did get to the games, was it was the feeling any different if it was a 20-minute drive or a 2-hour drive when it came down to it and you stepped onto the ice?
No, we were just eager to play. Yeah. And we played in some pretty scabby places, I'll have to say that, because they were secondary, maybe even third level type rinks that we played in, but we wanted to play so bad, we really didn't care. But there was a rink in Stirling, and the boards were really low, and the fans in Stirling were very, very supportive of their team, but they could get right up close to you because there was nothing along the boards, and they'd grab you, the floor sounded hollow. It sounded like you were on a rollerblade or a roller skate rink. It was a really weird rink, but I think they've replaced it now. But so those are the kind of the funny little things that we always encountered, and of just getting through. You took the trip, but then you had to deal with the facility that you were playing in. Anything
on those road trips ever get scary? Was there ever, like you said, you go through those ice storms, and I know teams travel in buses now for safety concerns, but were there ever any of those instances?
No, we didn't. There was one night we were coming down the 40 or the 115, and we were all had our heads stuck out the window because there was so much fog and snow, and that was scary. We had no idea where we were going, and we just kept going straight ahead, but not really. We didn't experience a lot of that. We did have some disappointments where we'd show up in the rink. It would be in the spring, and the rink would be so hot that there would be no ice, and they were. I mean, I never played in artificial ice, but the rinks again, with the systems that they had, but that would be disappointing because we couldn't play the game because the ice would be melted. And
that's a change that I'd imagine a lot of people take for granted around these times. It's something that As far as I know, I don't think I ever experienced, but do you
It didn't
remember?
happen a lot. It didn't happen a lot, but I think it happened in Norwood. I think it was,
Yeah.
in Norwood was a great rink, and we loved Norwood because it had great ice, and they were very supportive of us in Norwood. But I think it would happen one Sunday afternoon in Norwood. It was something happened to the system.
How long did you keep playing, or do you still play?
I still
maybe?
play. Yeah, I never really quit. I just play pickup now, and I love it. And it's pretty quick. It's a lot of young players come out to play. We play in Millbrook. We've got playing the new rink in Millbrook, so it's a lot of fun. And it's a wonderful group of people I'm playing with. I mean, you just experience different stages of your career where it's serious and it's. And when I first started, it was body contact, and I'm happy that ended. In the 80s, they decided to go with some divisions of to try the non-contact, and then eventually it all became non-contact, but not non-contact, no body checking.
Yeah.
So, but it was some pretty brutal games because it was, there was no governing body that was going to boot you out for life or those sorts of things. So there was some pretty mean people out there that you experienced, and there was a couple of players that I didn't particularly like to play against, but yeah, so that changed. The whole, that's what I like about the change in women's hockey, is the fact that it is tough. It is at higher levels. These girls are big and they're moving fast, and the equipment's really strong, and if you collide with somebody, you're really going to feel it. But and there is still a lot of tough play around the boards and in front of the net, but it's just not that open hitting for the sake of hitting. And I think that's what I liked about the change, that it wasn't just, you weren't going to get hammered into the boards just for the sake of getting
a message.
Yeah. So I think I think it's a wonderful game to me. It's fast and it's skilled, and that's what the no open hitting has done for women's hockey. These girls at the high end are very skilled. There's kids playing in Bantam here in Peterborough that are very highly skilled. Good stick work and skating and passing, and yeah, it's a great game now. It's the same, I think, as in junior hockey. I think the game's improved so much that it's the speed and it's the skill that's going to win the day now.
Yeah.
The old, slow-footed defensemen aren't just there anymore because they can hit and crush somebody into the boards. It's just not happening anymore. You've got to be very highly skilled and very smart. It's a smart person's game now.
Yeah, there are a lot of, we talked about this earlier, but with how closely things are analyzed in sports, the margin for error is that much smaller, so there's more pressure. And another change in sports, and you touched on it briefly, and that was the equipment. You say that the equipment's strong, and when you are moving upwards of sometimes 30 kilometers an hour on the ice, you could say it's important. But for you, with continuing to play hockey, you have seen an equipment revolution or an equipment evolution that most people don't get to see. What's it like for you going from what you were playing with? How old were you when you first started playing
16.
hockey? 16. From 16 years old to now.
Yeah, we didn't wear face masks. Some people didn't wear helmets. Well, I think we always wore helmets, but we didn't wear face masks, and some people didn't wear shoulder pads. So, and they were flimsy, and they weren't well made for sure. But yeah, it's gone to the protective equipment that's just covers your whole body, and to try to protect you from serious injury. I've been knocked out. I've been lost some teeth, like just the chips off my teeth, just because of not having the protection. And when I did have. I did get knocked out, and so I put a helmet on and I put a face mask on, and I was questioned by every referee because of the face mask. And I said, well, it's because I had an injury. Oh, well, then that's okay. Said, well, if it's okay to wear it to protect an injury, why not wear it to stop an injury? So then the face mask started to become mandatory, which was good. But it was, I had to fight the battle to be able to wear a cage on my helmet.
Wow.
Yeah, to protect an injury.
That would never happen now. We know that.
No.
But again, going through it, and as you do start to start to adapt to the new things. Was there anything that, like you talk about the face mask receiving pushback, but what was the most drastic change? Would have been the sticks? Did they evolve faster? The skates?
The sticks didn't evolve that fast. No. I've only just used a composite stick just since I've been playing pickup, and it's because they're light. But the wood stick continued on for quite some time. And the sticks didn't, I mean, they evolved because of shaping it. Bobby Hull and his big curve, and I did have one of those big curved sticks that's hanging in the ceiling at Hall of Fame, but I never really used it because you could never hit the net with it, because you take a shot and it would be over in the corner and not towards the net at all. But no, I don't think the sticks evolved as fast as equipment did.
Do you remember your first pair of skates?
Yes. When the first game of hockey I played in figure skates. And I came home and I said to my parents, I can't play hockey in these things. And my mother said, well, I don't think that you should be playing hockey. And Dad says, go and buy her a pair of skates. So that was the end of that conversation. And no more talk about not playing hockey. And it was probably more my mother not wanting me to play hockey on Sundays. So that was her thing. But Dad just said, no, go and get her a pair of skates. So she went and got me a pair of boys hockey skates, and I've never switched.
Do you remember the fine details of those skates? Are they still ingrained in your mind?
Yeah, they weren't that great because, I mean, obviously it was the sturdiness of them wasn't as, and you can look at the skates at the Hall of Fame, the old skates, and they're the same. They're just, it's just not because my mother went out and got me a cheap pair of skates. It was just because that's all there was available. You know, the tube skates, and even with my figure skates, my dad always took the pick off. Yeah. He always, every time I got a brand new pair of figure skates, he always cut the pick off because I couldn't skate with the pick on. But they just didn't work they just weren't good enough to play hockey. And so, anyway, yeah, no, they were kind of shabby then.
Oh, yeah, they all look just like thin leather with metal attached.
Yeah,
to
no
the bottom.
no support to them at all. But you know, so as I was then starting to evolve, and then I was working, and I could buy myself my first pair of tacks, and so I always had good skates after that.
And now, you said you didn't play hockey until you were 16, but clearly you
But I
could
played
skate.
on ponds.
Okay.
Yeah. I lived up, when I was growing up, we lived up at where the Trenton University is now, and my dad worked for the GE in the powerhouse up there, so we had the canal right there. So we were down on the canal. The moment the canal was frozen, we were down playing hockey with the boys, and so, but it was always figure skates that I had. But I played, so, you know, I played before I ever played organized. I always played hockey on the canal.
What do you think that did, learning the game freely, or having the opportunity to learn the game freely, to you when you did play it in an organized setting?
Well, when you were playing with boys, you had to think quick, and so playing with the boys certainly helped because you had to learn to move quick, and you know, you watched them the way they could stick handle, and you learned to stick handle, and some of it's natural ability. You know, you can tell the way somebody shoots that they're going to be a player. I don't care whether they're a girl or a boy. If I see somebody shooting, I know that they can be a player, and I know if they can't be a player because of the way they handle the stick. It's the same as when you throw a ball. It's the same as when you know, there's a natural way to do it, and if you don't have it, you can't. I don't think it can be learned. I just don't.
I guess your potential is not, you're talking about the potential the person might have. They can figure out the game, but it's not going to get to a point where they're going to be elite.
No. Yeah. No, if somebody's constantly whacks the puck, you know that they're never going to be much of a hockey player because they don't know how to shoot a wrist shot, or they don't know how to hold or handle a stick. Same with a bat, and same with, you know, throwing a baseball. It's their softball.
Now, as you're, I guess, collecting the history of women's sports, and specifically in Peterborough, I assume you're getting information just by doing it from other areas around Ontario or Canada. What would you say is unique about Peterborough's sports scene for women, or on the whole, but what would you say is unique about Peterborough sports compared to another place?
I don't think that it's unique in Peterborough. I think that we've got a lot of people participating. I think we've developed good leagues and good systems in Peterborough. I'm not necessarily, the only person outside of Peterborough that I'm talking to about women's hockey is Cookie Cartwright, because she's a bit older, and so she remembers even back further. But no, I think that Peterborough has just always been very let's see, I think they've always been supportive of sports. It's just ingrained in us. We're just a sports community, and so I think that other centers probably have just as good of athletes, but you know, I don't know why we produce more maybe than that make national teams, and because if you, especially on the women's side, if you see what women are doing now that have come out of Peterborough, it could be because of the development, it could be because of the opportunity. I think it all starts with opportunity. And so, no, I don't think Peterborough's different. I think we just have a lot of people playing. But if you look beyond Peterborough, I think there's other centers that are doing the same thing.
So I guess it's more of a community-based build, where you go back to where you were in your single-room schoolhouse, and you want to play because little Jimmy or little Jenny are also playing or something, and you're seeing them, and it starts to build that competitiveness. Would maybe that describe it better?
Yes, yeah. It's just building on and growing on what other people are doing. But you know, I think we have to be proud in Peterborough, and I will stay focused on the female side of it, because I think that in the game of rugby, where we have excelled in Peterborough, and it's good coaching, and it's having the facilities again, but we've got amazing results from our women's rugby. Hannah Darling making the national team. We've got girls soccer, women's lacrosse. I think that those sports that weren't traditional sports in Peterborough and have just evolved in Peterborough in the last 10, 15, 20 years, we've done very well. Our female athletes get scholarships to the States. So yeah, I just think it probably is opportunity and the availability of good coaches and availability of facilities. People do complain a lot, and probably about facilities in Peterborough. When we go other places and see what other towns have accomplished in terms of the facilities that they've built. And it would be nice if we can think that we're going to be able to have the same types of facilities that some other centers have. We don't understand why we don't, but I don't want to get into that political thing. I think that it's a budget thing, and but yeah, I think we could even do better if we had more facilities. We're lucky we have Trent University and Sir Sanford Fleming College that have partnered with the city on a lot of different things, and facilities being one. So you know, you can't go anywhere and do anything in sport if you don't have that grassroots ability, and there's no facility to accomplish that. I think our swimming pools are an example. Our competitive swimmers don't feel that they have the facilities that can push them. Some of these athletes have to leave Peterborough. You look at Amy Bush and Estella Warren had to leave Peterborough at a very young age to go and fulfill their dream of becoming synchro swimmers because of lack of facilities in Peterborough. And although Peterborough is the absolute hotbed and historical center for what they used to call ornamental swimming, and and I'm deviating here to other sport, but I'm just trying to say that in the field of sports in Peterborough, and for women in particular, some of them have had to leave. Jenny Wallinga, rowing, she didn't have to leave, but she left to go to university, and she ended up being on the Olympic team in rowing. So, but we've got a wonderful rowing program now in Peterborough under Carol Love that's probably second to none, and so we can develop good young rowers. And so I'm just saying that this is how it all evolves. This is what is happening in the Peterborough scene in sport anyway.
Yeah.
That the sky's the limit really in Peterborough, but it all goes back to facility and.
And the rowing facility is a lovely one. It's scenic as well, I guess, up at Trent University. And that word development, what would you say sport plays in the role of the development of young minds, young people, turning them into quality humans?
I think it plays a huge role.
Yeah.
I think it focuses them on something other than staying in the house, staying in their room, and particularly now the video games and the computers and the phones and things like that can take take them away from getting out and getting the exercise, but the kids that are involved in the sports they have a purpose to get up and they have to go to practice. I think it's discipline, and I think it's something that they enjoy doing. It gives them something to look forward to.
What did it do for you?
Yeah, same thing.
Same thing.
Discipline, something to look forward to, being involved, being a part of a bigger thing of teammates and friends, and the community that I belong to in the sport community is huge. It just keeps ever expanding because you cross paths with all of these people, across your lifetime, whether it's you're coaching them or you're watching them develop and just watching them. And I don't know, I just think it's a wonderful way to raise a family, and a lot of cases, not in my case, my parents supported me, but they didn't necessarily come out and watch me play. But others, it is a family thing. They travel together, and there's nothing against my parents. I mean, they were wonderful and miss them dearly, but they just provided me the opportunity and just said, go for it, do whatever you want.
Now, earlier I asked you what young Pat Bronson would think of your accomplishments and your current state. What would your message be to young Pat Bronson?
I'm just satisfied with what I've accomplished. I always, as an athlete, if I wasn't satisfied with the way I played, then I went home unhappy. And I didn't take it out on people, but I just thought to myself, you have to do better. And so I would just say I'm satisfied, and that to me is the biggest thing I can say to myself. I'm satisfied, because I always would say to myself, I'm satisfied with the way you played that game tonight. And that would be, internally, that would be my biggest thrill, would be just to say, you played well, you did what you had to do, and so I'm just satisfied with it all. And if it never happened, that would be fine too, because really, it was me being satisfied with my own performance and not what other people were saying to me. I had to be satisfied with myself. And so I'm not unhappy of things that I didn't accomplish. I'm just happy that I'm here where I am and in this wonderful city, and being able to be a part of the Peterborough District Sports Hall of Fame with all those great people down there. We just have a great time. And to me, that sitting around listening to the stories at the coffee table is the best thing that we do, that we accomplish in a week, is to hear the stories of when they played sports back in the old days, and the people that they knew, and it's the camaraderie. That's what the Sports Hall of Fame, working there and being a volunteer, that's what means the most to me. And I think it does to the people around that table too.
Amazing. Well, thank you for your stories, Pat.
Okay, thank you.